So, okay, and now we're recording. So I will move on to our first slide and introduce what we're talking about tonight, which is untangling thoughts, managing cognitive distortions and unhelpful thinking patterns. So we're going to cover, what are cognitive distortions, how and why do they happen, where do they appear, common neurodivergent thinking patterns, which occur as well. We'll look at that and what to look out for. Spotting triggers, automatic thoughts and thinking patterns which come up, which we might not have thought about previously. We'll look at how we can look out for those. Practical reframing strategies as well. So we'll look at some strategies to actually combat and challenge and break down any of these aspects which we come up against. And we'll also look at peer sharing and encouragement. Obviously, I'll ask everyone here today to sort of share their thoughts, what's worked for them, what they found difficult, things like that. So I'll move us on to, understanding a bit more about cognitive distortions. So cognitive distortions are unhelpful ways of that our mind interprets situations. So it's like the little tricks your mind plays on you, twisting reality without us even noticing most of the time. It's just the kind of instantaneous, it's a very quick thought which occurs in our brains and triggers us into a mode of thinking, pattern of thinking, you might say. And these patterns, like I say, they're often automatic, meaning they can pop up without us sort of deliberately choosing or realizing that it's happening. The tricky part is that they can feel true in that moment, especially. And with time, they can usually become exaggerated. It might be thinking about, it might be a thought that's exaggerated itself, or it might be a thought which is minimized and played down or oversimplified. So these cognitive distortions don't allow us necessarily to weigh up, what kind of an issue is in front of us. What is this situation? What does it mean? Is it serious? Is it less serious? So it's often things like thinking that one mistake defines us and makes us a total failure. That's an example of cognitive distortion. Another one might be assuming that someone doesn't say hello to us. For example, we've seen them, they didn't say hello to us, so that means that they don't like us. That's a cognitive distortion. And we know that that's most of the time not true. It's very likely that the person may not have seen you, or for whatever reason, they might be having a bad day. It might just be their tone and the way they are. But a cognitive distortion might make us think, actually, that person didn't say hello. Obviously, they don't like me. And that may lead to an ongoing set of thoughts which are negative about that particular person, that particular situation. People saying hello, it can exacerbate and develop into something more. So, and the key thing to remember is that these things happen to everyone. It's not just a neurodiversity thing. It's also in the neurotypical mind. The human brain looks for these shortcuts. It looks for making our lives easier because it wants the easiest route to the solution. So we often, our brains often work in that way to find what's the best way forward. What is the quick thinking approach to things to make things more efficient and more not process heavy, but process light for us. However, in neurodiverse people, what happens is these thoughts are exacerbated. So the cognitive distortions are just a bit more heightened than what you might find in someone who's neurotypical. Doesn't mean that the neurotypical person doesn't experience this. Everyone does. It's just that in the neurodivergent person, potentially it can be heightened. But yeah, we can explore the triggers and things like that as we go forward. The key thing is once we know what the triggers and recognizing cognitive distortions, we can really combat them and find really good strategies, which again, we'll come on to a little bit more. Why do they happen though? So why do cognitive distortions take place? Why do they occur? So like I say, our brains are designed to take these shortcuts to save energy, look for patterns. Sometimes when those patterns aren't necessarily there or don't need to be there. It's like lining up all the dots. It's like looking out the window and seeing a line of trees and they look perfectly shaped. When you visualize a situation, they're not always uniform, but what we want is uniformity. It's a natural brain response. If we've had certain past experiences as well, our brain remembers them and applies them quickly. So if we thought in that way before, our brain's going to want to do that the same way because it knows that it's quick and efficient to do so in the future. What this can lead to, especially if the situation's rather negative, is stress, sensory overload, fatigue, which can interact with each other, make the distortion in thought even more strong, even more difficult to deal with, even more stressful, and raise anxiety levels. And it might be in the situations where, you know, our brain is kind of in a survival mode as well. Maybe we're already under stress. That's often where cognitive distortions creep in even more. And we're maybe tired, overwhelmed with something else. Then our thought processes with other things in life lead us to cognitively distort situations potentially, and affect the natural way which our brain works. So does anyone ever experience this? And would you be happy to share some examples? It'd be really good to hear from all of you. Raise a hand to let us know, or put in the chat an example when you felt this and experienced it. Would anyone like to share? Yeah, Yorgo.
So a couple of meetings ago, I mentioned about an incident that happened between me and my friend from my amateur group during the Christmas period. So to cut a story short, for those who weren't there, we were trying to give out tickets, like give out leaflets for our shows, for our panto, and I was in charge of giving out the leaflets to everyone during our local Christmas fair, or turn on the light switch. And I was speaking to another friend of mine in the group's mum about the panto, how rehearsal's going, and then I forgot to give them out because I was giving out sweets as well because I didn't see the leaflets in the sweet box. So when I was speaking to my friend's mum, I said to her, here, take some leaflets because I forgot to give them out. Anyway, my other friend caught me doing that, and she snatched it out of my hand saying, you had one job to do X, Y, and Z. She got so annoyed at me in front of my friend's in front of my friend's mum, and she just stormed off. And I was left a bit taken aback. She's never reacted that way with me before. But anyway, we apologized and we're good. But since then, I've always felt a little bit weary around her, especially when it comes to, you know, like song ideas or contributing to ideas we could do for pantos or concerts. And I shouldn't really feel this way because, she is one of my really good friends, and my the friend I'm talking about is also our music director, and she's a teacher as well. So I try to see from her point of view that she's doing work, she's helping out with our panto, with the songs and all that. So it's like she's doing another job. So I try to put myself in her shoes. And she did apologize to me afterwards, but then since then I was just a little bit weary about it. And, I was trying to think, she's not mad at me. She's just mad that I didn't think give out the leaflets. And and we're all good now. We're good now. But since then I've just been a little bit just a bit weary about it. Does that make sense?
So absolutely, yeah. So future situations like that you've sort of approached with a bit of weariness and worry potentially, thinking about, is that going to happen again? It's that kind of thought process which has been triggered by an experience which, at the time wasn't what you'd expected. It wasn't a nice experience. But it doesn't mean then that all future interactions and experiences are going to be like that. So that's a good example of a cognitive distortion then. But I guess it's triggered by something that's happened and a bad experience. Thanks for sharing, Lord. Well, that's really helpful. And a couple of people in the chat have also mentioned as well. Zoe saying about tonight, in fact, why you're here. So always worrying about saying something wrong because you have a different opinion to someone else, and feeling that you should bite your tongue, but struggling especially if you think they are being irrational. Yeah, that's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's always that worry of, especially when you're in the same kind of vicinity as people who you've had that similar experience with before, and if you say or speak up and it's a negative response to you speaking up, or you get grilled for it or chastised for it, that can then lead you to worry about, again, future instances of raising your voice, saying something, giving your opinion. So that's aligns with kind of what Yod was saying a little bit there. Gemma also kind of in agreement as well, getting this with every single human interaction. That's interesting. And the fact that it's making you feel stressed and questioning yourself and judging yourself in lots of interactions, that's really interesting. And it just shows how, these cognitive distortions can snowball and then just become a thing, a normal thing. Our brains trigger that it's normal to be judging myself and thinking this way and analyzing every situation. Every time I want to, raise an opinion, say something, it's now become the norm that I need to just make sure and go through these cycles of thinking when actually you don't. Zoe's just extended on that, having a different opinion to young people, perhaps. And Gemma, Charlotte, who's Daniel on here. I think Charlotte's using another account, agreeing with what Gemma said. Yeah, but that's a really nice interaction, really good examples there from everyone. Brilliant. So lots of examples. And so if we sort of apply this and bring this back to a kind of neurodiversity and thinking patterns, let's understand and unpick why these things might be happening a little more. So some common thinking patterns. So overgeneralizing can be one of them, drawing broad conclusions from an event. So if we've had a situation like Yorgos's, for example, and we've drawn a conclusion that that's the way it's going to be from now on onwards, that's quite a broad way to think, because we know not every interaction, not every one-to-one, not every time we talk with that said person or other people, you're going to get the same situation occur again. The same with what Zoe and Gemma are saying as well. These situations, we can't think of them in an overgeneral way. We need to take a snapshot and look at it for the situation that took place, the instance, work out what happened in that instance and build from there, knowing that it's not always going to be the same. We'll look at ways to manage that in a moment. But, it's things like catastrophizing is another one, sort of allowing it to snowball, imagining the worst possible outcome, even if it's very unlikely. Because, our interactions often, 9 times out of 10, positive. They should, you can hold a conversation with someone, you can get a good outcome from someone in most conversations, unless that's not the case for you, in which case let us know and why you think that's happening. But we need to think in a positive way and think the majority of the time I talk to people, it goes well and the outcome's usually good. So we need to think not of the worst case scenario, but we need to also think, but actually it could also turn out like this. It could be really good, it could go really well, and make a bit of a balanced judgment on things like that. Another key thing is self-blame. So where we assume everything is our fault, no matter what the situation is. So you might not have done anything wrong, and it might have been just the person you were interacting with was in a bad mood, had a bad day, like we said. It's not your fault. So we need to look at it from that angle. Maybe it was just them. Maybe that was their bad day. I can't reflect upon it and think that I had something to do with that bad day. It was just the mood that they were in that interaction. It doesn't mean the next person I talk to is going to be in a terrible mood and treat me in the same way. So we need to reframe things and think about it from different angles. If we look at it again, zooming in a little bit more, looking at things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and how these things kind of interact with those. Well, with things like autism, there's often a preference for structure, clarity. This can lead to a bit of all or nothing thinking, which I think I've mentioned on a previous workshop, and I remember Yorgos asked me about it. So all or nothing is the thinking of, it's either all going to be great or all going to be really bad. And there's no kind of in between. There's no kind of structure to work out what the reality might be. It's just like jumping a little bit to conclusions to either end of the scale and not being able to gauge the balance. With things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, we've got things like repeated struggles with tasks, which can fuel self-blame or overgeneralization, because you might think, I always fail at this and I'm always just no good at this. And if you go into something with that thinking, then it makes it hard to feel positive about it in future times when you've got to deal with that task, that situation, whatever it might be. So that's kind of the overgeneralization aspect of it. And that reinforces then low confidence, and we don't feel confident going forwards. So we need to think about how, all or nothing with autism, dyslexia and dyspraxia, it could be self-blame, it could be overgeneralization, which are very common. With things like OCD, intrusive thoughts, and ADHD. So these intrusive loops which we get stuck into, where we can't escape them. We just, every time the situation comes up, the loop starts and we go round in circles and it comes back on ourselves. The next situation happens again, the same loop implements, and it's hard to escape from it. So the other thing with ADHD is like the racing thoughts, not being able to really focus in on something and ground ourselves to think clearly about the situation and future situations. And there's another thing called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which can lead to the catastrophization of situations where this is going to ruin everything. If I don't get this right, the rest of my experience going forward is going to be terrible for me. That's a common feature, especially in ADHD. And thinking about, trying to mind read, I guess that's another one. They must hate me because I said something in a way which didn't sound right, and their response was a bit weird. They must hate me now. That's quite A, catastrophizing thought, and B, we can't read minds. So we have to think in a more positive light and work out, what are the real reasons why we're feeling that way? How can we push that into future experiences in a more positive way? So just before actually that is my next slide. So do you have anyone ever feel like that? Depending on your condition, disability, what has been your feeling, your experience? How have you felt? Anyone like to share? Please raise a hand if you'd like to say something. It'd be great to hear from you as well. Yorgos says all the time. In what respect, Yorgos? In terms of which bit?
I think everything to what you said, like with my with my friend, she obviously, we're still friends, but like I said earlier on, I get very weary if I talk about song ideas for shows and all that. Other times it's with my old job. So say my boss was in a bad mood, would I feel, if I approached him, would I make the situation worse? Or say something happens like in the news and we have different opinions on something, will people think differently of my opinions? People's opinions are valid, we don't all agree on the same thing, but if I speak up, would I be targeted? That type of thing, thought process.
Thanks, Yorgo. No, Absolutely. So yeah, a little bit of kind of the mind reading aspect and the catastrophizing aspect in there, definitely. So yeah, overthinking the fact we can't know, can we, fully what the person might feel or think. We can go through the processes in trying to work that out, but we'll just eventually stress ourselves out a bit by negatively thinking about it. Oh, sorry, Jade. So Jade just asked what the question was. So in terms of what I put this slide back on, in terms of any of those aspects and in terms of your condition, do you feel any of these things? Do you experience any of these aspects which I just explained? And how does it feel for you? Zoe has said, yeah, but that's fine. You know, what is it Zoe shared in the chat in the run up to your period, probably because hormone levels are changing. Absolutely. I'm glad you shared that because that's exactly it. Being confident to share things like that and not worry about what other people, you know, how other people are going to take it. It's absolutely fine. We're here to share our experiences and the way we feel, but that's a valid point. So there could be kind of chemical things going on. You know, it might be, yeah, like you say, the time of the month. It might be other things. You might be extremely tired, run down, overwhelmed with other things. There could be lots of environmental things going on too. Jade, yeah, go for it.
Hiya, sorry, I'm just cooking tea, so I'm a bit chaotic right now. So I thought about the RSD, so I suffer with that like chronically. But I just want to say something quite positive. Like going through the PowerPoint so far, I've realised that like, wow, the work I've done, like I've improved so much. Like that was me in the past, and now like I've improved so much. But I've still got ADHD, you know, so that's not gone. With the RSD, I have it severely, obviously, feeling rejected, but I actually got it really, really bad, like, I don't know how to call it, perceived RSD for others. So, for example, I've got disabled students allowance with uni, and I had a study school tutor, or you used to be my study school tutor, and my new one, he was great, very ADHD friendly and everything, but he wasn't subject specific for me for psychology. He was like politics or something. And I worked with him throughout my year 2 degree, part of the degree. But now I've comes year 3, my dissertation year, like I need someone subject specific, because I've looked back at my feedback and there's a lot of feedback that was anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. What I'm trying to say is, so I contacted my provider asking for a new study skills tutor, but then for days and days and days, I'm, you know, ruminating. Oh my god, how is he going to feel? We really got on. He's going to feel rejected. I'm embarrassed. That's a big one actually. This is part of my honesty. Am I being over the top? Am I? I know I've got a right to ask for a new one, but like, should I have just got on with it? But now I've got a new study skills tutor. Life changing, absolutely life changing. So yeah, but I get RSD a lot for other people, which is a bit silly.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So like a reflective kind of RSD response to things. That's a really interesting way to put it. No, thanks for sharing that.
You're very welcome.
Very interesting. And Kate, yeah, you put your hand up as well. Go for it. What would you like to say? Oh, can you hear us, Kate? I think you're muted at the moment, Kate. We can't hear you. I think Kate's gone. That's all right. I'll come back to Kate in a moment. But yeah, Greta's also put in there. Yeah, you've had a bit of a dyspraxic nightmare day, getting frustrated and getting even worse at the task in a vicious cycle. So yeah, it's sort of affecting the kind of ongoing tasks you've got throughout the day, and sort of snowball effect, perhaps. Great. Yeah, some helpful and useful insights to your experiences again. So yeah, let's think about a bit of strategizing and approach. How do we approach these things? And the key thing, the fundamental thing, is spotting the triggers. First step, I would say, in working out cognitive distortions, managing them, is spotting when they happen. So they often show up in response to strong emotions, frustration, anxiety, overwhelm, pay attention to sort of red flag words that you might be going around in your head or that you might be saying, such as always, never, must, should, won't, the kind of very negative language that you might spot not only in your voice and your thoughts, but in what others are saying as well. That can often, trigger us to think, actually, this is quite negative. You always do this. You never tell me about this. You must go away and do this. And straight away, there's a kind of negative spin on those things. And equally, if you're saying it to yourself, I really need to do this. I must do it. I shouldn't have done that. I'll never get to where I want to be. It's that kind of negative speech pattern. Oh, yes, Alex, go on. You've raised the hand.
Hey, boss, you're right. Long time no
right.
see. Yeah. So I was just thinking about what you were just saying then. Like, basically, I'm sorry, my kids are hammering around the house. I'll just shut the door,
That's
trying
right.
to get the noise down a bit. So, yeah, so it's just something I've worked out a lot, largely as a result of you and the assistance you've given me, which is awesome. But the thing I've spotted is if I find myself leaning on absolutes, so like just like you were saying then, it's always this or it's never that, or like I start going into that that kind of very binary way of thinking where I see myself lending my thoughts to very polar opposites, or like I'll hang on to one principle and I'll find myself starting to believe that as a truth that I have to rely on, and I'm not fluid or flexible or taking other things and other circumstances on board. That's my trigger for knowing I've got to sit down and have a think. It's almost like if I find myself coming up with an absolute statement, I instantly know I've got to sit down and take some time. Because what I find is I struggle massively. I don't know whether it's like autism, ADHD, whether it's my RSD, which I get a lot, very much like what Jade was just saying. But like, it can also be coming from all sorts of places. But what I find is if I'm asking of myself or being asked by others, like so there's a demand coming in on me that relies on anything that starts with what, why, when, who, where, how. None of those questions can be answered yes or no. Like, what's your favorite color? No, doesn't work. And you go blue, green. I don't know. What do you want to hear? Like pink. I don't know. It's like you can't think about any of those questions with a binary thinking process. Like when you're ruled by anxiety and cortisol and threat and stress, or even excitement and dopamine, and you're like too bang at it to sort of ground yourself. It can go both ways, like psychologically speaking. But I find to get myself back to a point where I can consider the what, why, who, how, where, when questions, which means I can then ask myself about something, and then the benefit of asking those questions is you can then put it into context. So you don't just know the idea, you know the idea in relation to a place, people, a time. You can then thread it into a narrative. It's got a beginning and a middle and an end. You know what I mean? And those are the things that suffer when I'm in this frame of mind that you're describing, when I feel that I have to rely on an absolute and I don't really want to balance that against anything else, when I'm not placing myself in the grey area in between things and choosing like a more sort of mutually beneficial pathway. That's when that's my sign that I've got a trigger and that I need to like well, I haven't actually worked out what I need to. That's when I need to give you a phone call and go, fast man, I need to book a thingy. It's like, because it's all going to, I mean, you've met me before, innit? But yeah, I'll leave you in peace. That's my way of working it out. So as soon as I find the fight or flight, maybe freeze, binary, that side of my thinking, and I think I need to do something about it, that's my thing. Yeah.
That's
and
really
then the easiest way of getting through that is something I've done with CBT, with TalkWorks, which is which very rarely works, but on this instance it did. They put me through a process of working out something called a TFB sheet, which is thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And then thinking of a trigger, and then thinking of the thoughts that stemmed from it, the physiological feeling and the emotional feeling, and then the beliefs that I came to as a result of that. those things guided my actions. So not just looking at a trigger, but then looking at my interaction with that trigger. That helps me to pull away from psychotic things. Anyway, I'll leave you in peace. Sorry, I'm jabbering. Yeah.
No, that's all right. No, that was really helpful. I was going to ask you as well. Yeah, what do you do then in that moment? What have you practiced? Which
Yeah,
has worked?
normally just grounding, things like breathing, box breath, like breathe in, hold it, breathe out, hold it, that kind of thing. Music, especially. If I want to shift my head from one place to another place, the fastest way for me is music. Every time, guaranteed. Cuddles.
Good advice.
Yeah. Because like the other thing is, the best way to get rid of cortisol and anxiety and adrenaline is oxytocin. Best way to get oxytocin, have a hug for at least 30 seconds. Yeah. And like spend time with my kids, that sort of thing. Anything that I can do to soothe myself and then redress the equation. But if I'm going to do it practically, I'll use the TFB sheet and think about that. But psychologically and in the moment when I'm feeling, oh man, I've tipped the balance and I'm tumbling and I'm starting to slide or deregulate, then I'll just use breathing and grounding and music. Yeah. All right.
That's brilliant. No, what you touched upon there as well, the importance of touch. And I think Jane isn't on tonight's one, no, but Jane, who's a counsellor who I work with as well, she's really good at, she's well researched in the area of touch and its importance for helping us, ground ourselves, and when we're triggered by something, helping us bring us back down to sort of, equilibrium level and to think clearly again. That's really helpful. I'm glad you mentioned it, Al. Thank you. Jade as well. You put your hand up.
Yeah, just really quickly, I just thought of something that I relate to with RSD again with myself. Like, so obviously, I feel like when I say something to anyone, I feel like they need backstory and I feel like they need context for everything. So then when I was speaking then, when I went off camera and like went on mute, I was like, oh no, does everyone hate me? I wasn't speaking too fast. Like, do you know what I mean? And it's like, no, the fact is, people in chat said they relate. Like I do TikTok, I've just reached like 6k followers, and they like me rambling. Do you know what I mean? But after I post a video, I'm like, oh no, everyone's gonna hate it. Everyone's gonna laugh at me. So yeah, I just want to share that about RSD.
Yeah, no, that's interesting as well, isn't it? Yeah, it's just that it's the automatic thought processes that you're going through because previously you've been experiencing that and it's been the norm. So it's trying to like break that cycle, isn't it? But that's helpful. Thanks for sharing. And so we've, spotting these triggers, what do we do with it? Alex pointed out some really nice strategies there, but another strategy is just jot it down. The automatic thoughts that are coming in to your mind. And I know I say this a lot with like reflective work, but reflective work is so valuable. We forget about it because we're always in the moment, we're always rushing about. If we just stop for a few seconds and take note, or even if it's easier to take a voice note to self, voice memo, what are the automatic thoughts that I'm having right now, just to get them out of your head and somewhere tactile. And this journaling approach can help us notice again these patterns over time. What are the common situations? What are the common words that trigger me? What are the common feelings that I'm having when these things are happening? It's great to do that because then you can really sit down, and when you're in a good place, you can analyze it all and review it all. But it's hard to capture that when you're not in the real moment, in real time. If you can do it and trick yourself into a way of thinking that when these triggers are happening, I must write it down and I must work out a way of recording this. I think you'll be better for it. It's almost going to be automatic sometimes as well for some people because they'll just be noting it down, offloading it. That's one therapeutic thing you can do straight away, just in the moment. It's helpful. So yeah, awareness is the foundation for change. And if we look at emotional regulation and overwhelm, so like the strong emotions that come with it all fuel the distorted thinking. So in that moment, we're feeling anxious, stressed, angry, exhausted, whatever, some of the things you've described. It adds to the flare up. It makes it worse. And that's why it's also important to spot the early signs: racing heartbeat, rising frustration, cold sweats, sensory overload. Maybe you're starting to really get agitated by the noise, the sound levels, the light. whatever it might be. So in those moments, like I was saying, find grounding tools, grounding techniques. A typical technique, the 5 senses check. Notice what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're smelling, what you're tasting. Again, write it down. Do a little touch point check to check in with yourself. And again, reinitiate those senses and put them back to zero almost. Or find out, where's the trigger coming from. If you can't work out or vocalize what the trigger is, let's find out what it is in terms of the senses. But if you're like, feeling really hot and bothered and sweating profusely, maybe it's related to that side of things. Maybe I need to take myself out of the room, get out into the cold, fresh air to bring myself back down so I can think clearly again. It's that fight or flight response, isn't it? But it's in a more staged and carefully managed way. I know that's extremely hard to sort of think about doing in the moment. But like I say, if you can train yourself and trick your brain into doing that as an automatic thing, you're going to be able to find out how to combat these feelings even from an even better place. And I'm not saying it's impossible to do that without working out the triggers, but when it's in the moment, you're going to find what the reality is, the real feelings and thoughts. So are there any triggers that you've noticed, like any particular ones? I think Al mentioned a few, but anyone tell me like typical things that really set you off and set your brain into a mode of cognitive distortions and catastrophizing and thinking the worst? What sort of triggers? Jade says noise. Yorgos, yeah?
Yeah, for me, it was loud noise, and I'll tell you a quick funny story. So I was in Crete for the Easter holidays, and for those who don't know, if I don't understand this, Easter is massive in Greece. It's Christmas for us, and we were in the square, and there was these kids really saying they were throwing bangers on the street, and it's just that uncertainty, like, are they going to release fireworks? Is a banner going to pop up? And I tried to like stay calm, but then it's nothing worse when you're engaging in a conversation with someone and you're standing there being like, is something gonna happen? Something gonna happen? But then the one thing that brought the camel's back for me was we're in the square, we were holding the candle that's meant to represent the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and it was fine. And I knew I was expecting fireworks, but then I think someone let out a banger, and I just had enough of it. So I was parry walking like away from the noise, the fireworks. But then someone that I knew stopped me to wish me happy Easter. And then once the fireworks started, I remained calm. I went back to find my family. And now I love fireworks, don't get me wrong, but I don't like them when they're that close, or when you're out and about and a big loud bang happens and you don't expect it. That's the worst thing for me. And there was one time someone threw like a banger and a car was approaching, and I was like my heart was in my throat. Luckily there was no casualties, but that is a hazard. That was an absolute hazard in my opinion. So I mean, it was still a good night, but chaotic at the same time.
Interesting. Yeah. So a lot about noise and environmental kind of lots of things going on. That resonates with a lot of people there as well. Greta saying about motorbikes. God, they're a nightmare, aren't they? When they fly by your window, you're focused in on something, and then suddenly, loud noise. Zoe saying about lack of sleep, hormones, lack of exercise. Yeah, that's another one. We can get more sort of triggered when we're in a state of I haven't exercised and I need to sort of expel some energy somehow. If there's a build up of that, can feel more kind of on edge. Being hungry as well. That's the hangry phrase that people use, isn't it? And unpredictable noise, like Greta says, yes, is the worst. I agree. I think that can be really triggering, can't it? So yeah, there's lots of triggers which can. So this exacerbates them. Does it make the situations of cognitive distortions worse for you? Does it, like, when those cognitive distortions are happening in your head, is it exacerbating it, make it really much worse for you because you can't think clearly? What would people say? Do they sort of go hand in hand and have a knock-on effect on each other? Anyone want to share? Oh, sorry. I'll repeat it. So when, so you've given examples of these triggers. So noise, sensory things, all the things you've kind of mentioned in the chat. Do these triggers make the cognitive distortions and that mode of thinking much worse for you? Or do you think it's something that goes alongside it? Is it just a natural thing? Do these kind of, sensory aspects make things worse generally for you? Is it much worse in terms of cognitive distortions? Oh, Alex, yes.
Right. I've got a theory about this. So, so yeah, it does make it worse, but it makes it worse in a more specific way. It's not just as simple as something is leading to something else, and then it's not like some kind of Newton's cradle thing where it's all just knocking along and then there's a reaction at the end. For me personally, I think it feels, given my experience anyway, it feels more like it's laminated. It feels like there's more layers. So if I am traveling to work in the morning and some guy whizzes past me on a hairdryer, two-stroke something or another, and completely freaks me out because I wasn't expecting it, or like I end up getting lost on way to work, and so that sort of pathfinding becomes a trigger, then there's the anxiety of, like, maybe there's another layer of social anxiety because I've now got to explain to my boss why my timekeeping's awful or whatever. So things build up. And they build up. And if I don't get time to transition between these laminated or layered or sandwiched triggers, if I don't allow certain margins in my day for just decompressing, then it builds up and up and up. And the difficulty is not so much that they are triggers and that I need to regulate and that I need to find ways to cope and get through the moment. The difficulty is if those moments continue without any respite, that's when I get close to meltdown, shut down, close down. That's when I find myself escalating to a point where I've tipped over the point of no return and I'm just like plummeting psychologically. And I have a great fear of the point where I'm about to get to that stage. And I feel I can't let, so that adds to the tension, which can often compound it and then bring it on quicker, which is just not useful at all, but it seems to be the reality. But yeah, so that's my issue is that it's not so much that these things occur. It's not even how to deal with them on an individual level. It's what happens when enough of them occur in a short enough time frame to push me over that edge. And the depletion that I feel from the expenditure of then going through a meltdown or a shutdown, because that just costs so much energy. It's a phenomenal outlay, and it's something that can knock me out for hours and days, even very easily. So I've kind of, so what I'm trying to say here is one of the first things I ask myself now, given hindsight and my life's experience, is not only what has triggered me and what are the circumstances, and like you say, write it down, but I don't write things down. I make an audio note. I get the audio recorder on my phone and I just shout at it. I'm a bit dyslexic. I'm no good with words, especially when I'm upset or in a fight or flight frame. The last thing I'm going to do is write anything down, but I will shout at something. So that's fine. That's my way of doing it. But what I do is I shout about it and the setting and the triggers and the feelings and beliefs that stem from it, like I said a minute ago. But I try and I'll also shine a light on what happened before. how I got there,
Mhm.
because often it's like the straw on the camel's back, you know, it's that
Yeah.
one last thing that just over the edge like that. And it's,
Mhm.
and then it's like a stack of cards, you know, just falling.
Mhm.
So I've got to remind myself what happened before, or what led up, or where I was coming from as I got to that point, as well as that point. And if I consider
Mhm.
those two things in unison, that is a far more secure basis for resilience. And once I understand both of those things, I'm happier to go
Mhm.
back into that situation with the knowledge I'm probably going to manage it a bit better next time. And if I don't have that
Yeah.
information, I'm going to avoid that situation like the plague
Mhm.
until I do have that information. So then it becomes something
Yeah.
kind of, it may be that I got upset about the situation because of PDA, but then it steps into the realms of RSD, because then I'm like, I'm not going to do that because I know it's going to go wrong. And I start
Mhm.
doomsaying and thinking the worst.
Mhm.
And, you know, and it may
Yeah.
not, but I'm just thinking I can't accept it. You know, if people reject me again for that problem, or you know, that's where my RSD kind of steps in with a
Yeah.
furious vengeance. Anyway, yeah, that's my take
No,
on it. Yeah, I'll leave you to it.
no, thanks. No, that's really good, Alex. Thanks for that. Yeah, and just a note on use of language. Let's be careful with our terminology. I'll put a
Oh,
few
sorry,
bleeps in the
I'm
recording.
terrible with language. I
That's all right,
really
Alex.
apologise.
No worries, no worries. And yes, but no, really good points. Really well expressed in terms of like your examples that you used. Really good. So what you sort of touched upon was what I was coming on to in terms of like distortion. Distortions often hide these strengths under the self-doubt. And when we kind of, if we can strategize and think back to what things we've done really well in the past, how we've overcome issues previously, because when we're in that moment, we often forget about all of that. We don't think about our strengths. We don't utilize uh, our strengths to our advantage. But if we can find a way of looking backwards and reframing, which is often what's done in CBT, which Alex mentioned as well, a little bit of CBT creeps in here. And ways of reframing our thoughts, reframing the challenges, the difficulties, the negative aspects, and putting a positive light. And I've sort of mentioned that previously as well. I also wanted to touch on what Gemma said. I think, where was it in the chat? You mentioned a word which I think you said interrupted. It's the interruption, going back to what we were talking about before. These interruptions can make it much worse, like the sensory noise, the difficulties around the situation we're dealing with, them all sort of folding in within each other. And that layering kind of thing, which Alex is talking about, just exacerbates and makes it much worse. So distractions, irritability can increase, leads to more triggers, leads to this cycle of difficulty, stress, anxiety, etc. So we need to think about reframing. How do we do that? Well, when we catch the distortion, when we've worked out what the triggers are, pause and ask yourself then, is this 100% true, this thought that I'm having? When you're in a place, and I'm saying post processing the triggers, like I say, writing them down, working out what they are, then begin to question things, not in a negative light, but in a, with the positive light. So instead of saying, this is true, I'm just rubbish, it's not working out for me, ask it as a question. Is this thought 100% true though? Because, in the past, I know I've done this, this, and this really well, and I've overcome this and this situation with flying colors. So why am I thinking about this particular situation in such a negative way? Is it true? It's probably not, because I know I've fixed it before. Often the answer is no. So our minds exaggerate, they jump to conclusions and extremes, or polar opposites, like Alex was saying. And we only see part of the picture then. We're not seeing the whole image in front of us. We're only seeing the bad parts, the black and the white. We're not seeing all the color, which is what we want to be able to do. So reframing. So yeah, instead of saying I failed completely, I had a setback, but I also learned something. It's more reflective, more reflexive when we can say we're reflecting on it, but we're also saying, actually, it felt like this, but it could be this. And I did manage to find a way out of it, and this could be a way out of it. So it's that more strong, sturdy way of looking at things. So yeah, explore alternatives, more balanced perspectives, replace extremes with both and thinking, both or and thinking, and use compassionate self-talk to challenge the harshness. You might be being really harsh on yourself, and most of the time when people tell me about these situations, they're being just really hard on themselves and actually not giving themselves the benefit of the doubt a little bit as well. So look at that. Also, in terms of like masking and self-criticism, thinking about that. So many neurodivergent people mask to fit in. We've talked about this before in previous sessions, but it leads to this harsh inner dialogue, doesn't it? I know a lot of you resonate with that. It leads to you talking negatively about yourself internally and not then being able to let that go or overcome it using some of the strategies. So that's why it's important to build in, note the triggers, note the ways of framing it in a different way and practicing that. So yeah, recognizing that it can be masking as well, and that you could have masked in these situations, and maybe you've just done it to fit in, but it's, you know, feeling really stressful post the situation because something's been said, and then you're in the cycle of, you know, questioning what you've done, what you've said. Recognizing that masking could play a role here. Another key aspect of your strategy and your approach. And then practical tools. And again, we're getting towards the kind of CBT aspects of things, which if you ever had CBT, it's provided on the NHS a lot in the UK. It's an avenue of reframing thinking, but it's very helpful. I think it's one of the more successful approaches that the NHS implement through talk therapy. So we've got things like thought record sheets, which are, Yorgos, cognitive behavioral therapy is CBT, just answering your question there. But yes, thought record sheets. So we're thinking about the situation, the thought, the feeling, and reframing it. And I'll show you an example in a second. Mindfulness and grounding techniques. So breathing techniques, things like that. Creating space for yourself, walking out in nature, just going for a walk, getting some exercise, taking breaks where you need to take breaks and not pushing through and burning yourself out when you should really take a step back sometimes. Building in the journaling, things like that. Positive self-statements. I did my best today. It was a horrible day, but I did my best. Things like that to try and break the cycle of negative thinking and negative thoughts, which come with cognitive distortions. And breaking the worries into steps. This all kind of leads towards what I want to say in the next couple of slides. So examples of positive statements you can use, and notice the difference in wording. This is more like I am, I can, I will. And when we reflect on what we were saying before about the negative words, I never do this, I won't do it, can't. We're now thinking I am, I can, I will, I'll get there. It's that type of thinking we need to instill. So some examples of positive statements to be telling yourself and be talking through and be practicing to try and use to build up your confidence. And this is something which you might have seen in CBT if you've ever had CBT. Thought record. And I spelt that wrong. It should be, it's not a though record or a thou record, it's a thought record. I will fix that. Situation. So what was the situation? Describe it in a few words. What were your automatic thoughts? You know, what came to mind straight away? What situations did it remind me of that, you know, I thought of straight away on the spot? What was I feeling? What were the emotions which were taking place in that time? Was I angry? Was I anxious? What was it? Note them down. Just key bullet points. You don't have to write a narrative if you prefer narrative, which I know some people who like to voice note as well. You narrate it, absolutely fine. Evidence for and against this. So when we've got to that place when we've identified the triggers and we can actually sit down and really think carefully about it, we might pick this thought record up again and think about, okay, what's the evidence in favor of my negative thought there and the truth behind it? Is it 100% true? what backs that up, but what evidence is against it. Balance it up, try and weigh it up. Sometimes there's going to be times where we're wrong and we've just made a mistake. It's natural, it's normal, it's human. Majority of the time, we're overthinking, we're criticizing ourselves, we're overdoing it. We're not giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt. So in the against side of things, you might see when we're in a good thinking space, that populated with lots of examples. What would then be, and this is the reflexive thinking, the alternative thought or action in future. If this arises again, how could I approach it differently in the lead up to it? Or, I mean, if it was a surprise, there's not a lot you can do if it's a very spontaneous thing, but there's things you can do after it as well. How should I respond? So give yourself some ideas, examples, practice those things. The more you journal and note these things and develop a bit of a thought record going forwards, the more you can work out in future situations how to handle it, how to think in a more strategic way. And I'll get to you, Alex, in a moment. I saw you raise a hand, but I just wanted to also share this acronym STAR technique. Stop, think, act, review. When you notice yourself becoming overwhelmed and the negative thoughts taking hold, perhaps, deliberately pause yourself. And this is going to take practice. This is what you want to get to at the end of all this. The crucial first step to identifying the triggers, to be able to stop and pause and find a 5-minute space to work out what's going on. Then you can think, bring your conscious mind into process, talk to yourself and say, what's happening right now? What am I thinking or feeling? Like I say, just briefly, you don't have to do the thought record at this point, but you can if it helps to have something like that, or a voice note to self. Then act. After you've analysed the situation, and this is usually after, not in the moment, because we don't want to make any, rash decisions on the spot. Don't feel pressured into having to make sharp decisions. You can take this away, take it home, get to a better place, and then review it, which is when you then act on things. So you build up your repertoire of, okay, how do I approach this differently? How do I manage it in future? Like we said on the thought record, and review. So when we've gone and tried and tested these things out again, when these situations have arisen, we need to keep reviewing it. Like with anything, we need to look at things, we need to maintain, is this process continuing to work for me? Do I need to tweak it? Has another situation arisen, or has an adaptation of that situation come up? The situation happened, but with a new added surprise. So I need to go back and review that approach to it. Try the STAR technique. That's where you really want to get to at the end of all the steps which I've sort of described. Alex, yeah. Sorry, I kept you waiting.
No, it's fine, man. You're getting near the end of the thing, and I don't want to like launch you into the oblivion of being running late and all that. Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, you had the table up a minute ago with the review thing. So like you can like, there you go. That's the bugger. So that's great when you've got to share it with someone else. That's brilliant. I've made a much simpler, smaller version of that for myself.
Good. Yeah.
But I've got my colourful dots system, which you understand, but no one else does. So like often, especially at work, I'll put colourful dots on the side of a piece of paper, and it tells me instantly what emotional offence is driving me with that document. So I can like put all my jobs on a job list, and next to all the jobs I can put a load of colourful dots. And if I'm going to work out what I'm going to do, if I'm in a particularly like anxious frame of mind, or I'm having a particularly difficult day, or I'm struggling to cope, I'll go for all the ones with a green dot or a purple dot for various reasons. I won't explain it now because it would just do everyone's head, and they'll be like, that owl's fucking weird. No, but yeah, you know what I mean. Like, so, but you come up with your own system for yourself, as long as you don't have to share it. That's no problem. And I find it really helpful at work because everyone just sees all these things and they don't pay any mind to it, whereas it's me actually adjusting for my own stuff. But yeah,
No,
the STAR technique thing. One thing I have found is, especially at work, I don't ever have an argument with someone unless it's on email, because it slows me down. If I do it on email, I've got to think about it. Then I've got to work out the punctuation. Then I've got to run it by you. Then I've got to run it by my wife if it's kind of related to anything, whatever.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I can draft it the night before, have a sleep, wake up the next day, and then send the email the day after if I still feel like that. And it is exactly for the reason that you think with that STAR technique, with the stop, think, act. If I just meet people, talk to people, have meetings, do Zoom, Teams, text message, WhatsApp, I can really make things worse very fast. My capacity to make a mess is unbelievable. It's almost like a talent. But yeah, so like that's something I've just, especially professionally at work, where they they don't have any patience for people.
That's good advice.
I just do it all on email, and then you've also got a written record of everything. If it all does go wrong, you can nail them. But anyway, I'll let you get on, man. Sorry,
Thanks. No, that's really helpful. And again, really good advice. And your suggestion to, if I go back to the thought record, you can traffic like that and make it as simple. Maybe that's better if you've got a red, amber, green kind of approach, because in the moment you're just thinking red, amber, green, aren't you? Mostly red. If it's a stressful situation. So you could code it, you could number it if that makes more sense to you, just to make your life easier, make it a bit more of an efficient process. But it's all adaptable and just suggestions for everyone to take away. And as we know, community peer support, this is key. You have to talk to people. You've got, people you confide in, people you trust. Our group here, which we've got, which has been brilliant for the last few months, you can share, you can talk, you can ask questions, you can ask people's opinions. Do you think I've sounded like this in this interaction? Or, put a question out to the group. It's always helpful to hear what other people think. And I'm really glad that everyone's shared really nice stuff and really helpful strategies themselves, experiences, because it's only going to help everyone going forwards. And thank you to those who have shared in the chat as well. I think we've covered that. We've gone over time as well. But anyone who's got other strategies, please do share in WhatsApp, email, and just some closing takeaways for you there, just to as a bit of a summary of today. And again, I'll share this all out with everyone, the slides. I will edit the video a little bit before I post it out. And as long as I've got everyone's say so, everyone's happy with me releasing it, I will do that too. And that will be the norm for future sessions. And final thing before we go, for everyone that's still here, just to remind everyone of the body doubling online sessions, drop-in sessions which are taking place. They're going to start from the 10th on Wednesday evening, and you can drop in. The first one is going to be absolutely free because I want everyone to have a taster and know what it's like, but it's going to be a space where we can get work done together, ask questions to each other if we want to have a chit chat. But just know that you're in the same space. I'll be present too. You can ask questions if you want anything, guidance on anything. So we can all collaborate and help each other out. These sessions are going to be recurring and regular. From the first session onwards that you join, it will be a small fee, which you can sign up through TidyCal. Not obliged to join every single session, so what suits you. That's my little introduction to that. And of course, we've got feedback as usual. It always helps me. I'm going to be applying for some funding too, so all your positive feedback always helps, or negative, constructive stuff is helpful to me, helps me make this better for you all. Any last questions from anyone? You can stay behind and ask me, but I'm going to stop the recording now. So feel free